on, we have now psychiatric mental health illness. Okay, so now this is the loss of the ability to respond to the environment in the ways that is in harmony with oneself or the expectation of society. See, I love this definition because it doesn't just talk about society, but it talks about oneself. It also matters how I see myself coping with this issue. See, because on the outside, people look at Nicolette and they're like, wow, girl, I don't know how you manage. You doing like, you got this and you have this and you doing this. Wow, you're doing, but inside, Nicolette is dying. I need help. But I don't want to verbalize it because everybody thinks I'm okay. And that's sometimes a big problem. So it's not just about what other people can see in society that is, oh, everything is, the house is intact and the husband is being fed and the children are okay and the job is great. No, that individual also has to be able to perceive that they are in the ability to respond to their environment in a harmonious way. Right? They can cope, right? So it's not only society, but it's also individual. And it's not only individual, it could be society because it could be the other way around. I have to think I have it all under control. And people ask me, you doing okay, girl? And I'm like, yes, what's wrong? Everything's fine. But they're looking at me and they're like, you sure about that? I don't think so because what you just did right here, off the chain. See, I think I have it all under control, but society is looking at me. And a lot of times we see that too. We have people who don't think that they have coping mechanisms that are out of whack or defense mechanisms that are not working for them. And they think they're okay. But we look at them and we're like, that is not right. Something is wrong there and she needs help. Get her help now, right? So it has to be both self and society, right? So now personality characteristics, right? We have the ones I highlight is thoughts and perception may not be reality based, right? This person might have, grandiose thinking. They think they're a pilot and they never, flown a plane or that kind of thing. Ability to find meaning and purpose in life. They don't want to live anymore. It's like, what's the point of living? What's the point of being here? What's my purpose, right? And they don't want to kill themselves. They want to commit suicide, and that's an issue. Meeting one's needs may be problematic, right? Whether they groom themselves, whether they eat, whether they go to the bathroom, whether they do the things that we know that everyone should do in order to be, well kept and groomed and functional, right? They can't do those things because they're stuck in their mind, right? Some of them are just comatose, like, or just, what is it called? I forget, but they're like just stuck, no moving, right? There's so many different levels to this, but not being able to meet their own needs is a problem. Now, adaptation to stress. So this is something that we all have some kind of level of been equipped to one way or the other. But sometimes, whether it's taught, in your family, maybe it's taught in school, maybe it's taught somehow, or you learn it through watching people or television, whatever. But there's some kind of adaptation that you have to get to in order to withstand stress, right? Because stress is not normal, but there's good stress and there's bad stress, right? Stress is not the problem, it's how you deal with the stress. And sometimes it's what the stressor is. And I always remember, when they talked in nursing, how, a wedding is a very stressful situation, right? A birthday party could be very stressful. A new job could be very stressful. Me talking to you right now with all these professionals online is a little stressful right now. But how do I adapt to that stress? Like what mechanisms do I have in place that helps me say, okay, all right, am I ready for this? I might not be able to do this, but how can I adjust my lifestyle, my thinking, my process, right? In order to cope with this, in order to manage this, right? A person who's just one way, thinks in one dimension, in one perspective, they're the ones who are not going to cope well. You have to be able to shift and change, right? One of the things I love that is said, like, for example, when you're studying, and as a tutor, I can tell you, right? If you're using the same techniques to study or to do something, anything, they tell you, if you continue to do it and there's no results, something wrong with you, right? You have to learn to change and adapt and reassess things and move in a different direction. And that's what adaptation is being able to see what the situation is and change yourself, change your mentality, change your ways, change your environment even, in order to manage whatever you're facing at the moment, right? And in order to do that, we have coping mechanisms that can be ineffective or or effective too. So they may be ineffective or non-existent, but they can also be effective. So, but in this sense, we're looking at psychiatric nursing. So we're seeing that these people have mechanisms that are not effective, right? It's a change, was a change for the worse. It's a change that is not helping them in any way, right? And so now let's look at these coping mechanisms. So coping mechanisms are there. It's an effort to decrease the stress, right? It's in order to for me, let's say when I want to cope with something, like I'm spiritual and religious. So I'm like, you know what, God, you handle this because I cannot even bother. Like, or even in this situation, I'd be like, okay, God, help me remember so I can do it right. I pray. That might be my thing to do, right? To reduce my anxiety. Or it could be, okay, before I go, I'm going to study and I'm going to do this. Like you have different methods, right? But it's there in order to decrease your anxiety, decrease your stress, so that you don't have to be at this level of heightened, oh my God, what do I do? What am I going to, that's the coping mechanism. So coping mechanisms can be constructive or destructive, right? It could be music. Music can be a coping mechanism. That's one of mine too. I love songs. I love, mostly Christian, but I listen to country. I listen to gospel. I think that is Christian. And I listen to classical, right? I love music. And other people love it too, and it helps them de-stress, right? That's a positive one. But others can be destructive, and we're going to see them. The destructive ones are more like also defense mechanisms, right? And so it says an anxiety. So when I think of defense mechanisms, I think of like the fight and flight, right? If you remember what that is, that's like when something happens, you're like, okay, what do I do? Do I go for it and attack it and do what I got to do so I can, get out of the situation, or do I run and do I fly and do I, leave it right? In my mind, when I think of defense mechanism, I think of fleeing. Like I don't want to deal with it, right? I don't want to have to, right? And that can be a very bad thing, right? So here's a list of all the defense mechanisms that exist. I highlighted a few of them because these are the ones that we are more familiar with, right? And they question a lot on the exam. So there's a lot of other ones. And when I say they question on these, again, I always mention that does not mean that you don't read the other things that I didn't highlight, because there are a lot of questions, there's a lot of content, and they can pull things from many different places. But I want you to definitely know these, right? Know the others too. But if you don't know these, to me, that's like, you need to know them, right? So denial, right? Fantasy, fixation, right? These are some of the ones that, isolation, projection, regression. When a person is not coping properly and they have a defensive mechanism, right? Regression in the exam, you'll see that a lot in pediatrics, right? When there's a newborn baby and you're like, wait, children, what is that? Coping mechanism? Children? Yes. Children, adolescents, they have stresses too, right? I was watching or reading an article in the Times, and they were like, how to identify, what is it? What's the word? Oh my goodness, it escapes me now. Psychopaths early. I'm like, what? And then they look at 7-year-olds. 7? And then, she's manipulating the other 7-year-old so that she could, and I'm like, oh my God, they're starting young, and they're all in this camp where they're, assessing them to see if they're going to become so, I don't know what parent decided to put their child in a psychopath observation camp. But the point is, there are poor coping mechanisms that young people, as young as 7 years old, can manifest too. And regression is one. And it's one of the passive ones, because one of the ways they'll ask the question too, let's say we said the child is, have a new baby, and all of a sudden they start wetting the bed again, right? Or there's or sucking their thumb, right? That's another one. Like they left the bottle, left the thumb, and then there's a new baby sister, and now they're sucking their thumb and they're back to the bottle, because that's regression. Or if they're sexually abused and they were no longer wetting their diaper, not diaper, but wetting the bed. All of a sudden they're wetting the bed, and you're like, what happened? They were out of the, yeah, that's a problem, right? Because it's regression. It's going back to a previous state of, infantilism or something like it's something, so you can see, I have to look more into this, right? Because there's a problem, right? So even in children that happens. In pediatrics, you'll see that mentioned quite a lot with regression, right? And then there's suppression, right? Now intervention. So we're going to assist the client to identify the source of anxiety. That is really important, right? What is causing you stress? Why? See the word why. We're not going to say that to them. But how did you get here, right? And what are we going to do in order to get you out? But the only way we can get you out is if we can identify what got you here in the first place, right? So determining whether the defense mechanism used by the client are effective for him or her, or create additional distress. And sometimes the person might not even realize that this is an issue. I remember when I was a bit, there was a show that was on Boston. It was a law show, right? A show on law. I thought this guy, man, he was like the best. I loved to see him. But like towards the middle of the show when it was airing, there was this African-American guy who came on, and he had two personalities. And I think we were introduced to the female version. Like he would take on the persona of, I think it was a female. I forget. It was a long time ago, but he had two personalities. And so when he was in the office, he would be one person, but when he was at home, he would be one person. And the main character guy, he didn't know at first. My point is, sometimes a person will put on a persona or a character or whatever, and that's how they face life. Right? And now, is it a positive way? Is it a good defense mechanism? Or is it a poor, or is it a good coping mechanism, or is it a defense mechanism? And how is it affecting their life? And in his case, when he needs to bring out, I don't know, let's say, I'll use Martin Lawrence, Shanae, that's the only one I remember in my head, right? To deal with somebody and to tell them off, that person came out, and because the other person that he was wouldn't be able to face it, right? So knowing now, okay, so there's an issue with you and confrontation, right? So when you're faced with having to speak your mind, there's a stressor. Okay, so now how do we cope with that in a way where we don't have to bring out Shanae? Maybe we could find other ways to deal with this, right? Because maybe Shanae might be, it's not relatively accepted in our society. I'm just saying, let's find another way, right? But there's different things that we can look into to see, is this mechanism helpful? And is it destructive, right? Other people, they take drugs, right? Narcotics or not, cocaine, or, some people, they smoke, right? And it's just a cigarette, but it's a coping mechanism. Oh, this child getting on my nerves, I need a cigarette, right? Was that a good thing, or is that a bad thing? Like, what are you doing that's helping you cope that might be destructive? And how can we use something different that is also helpful? Like yesterday, one of the services that I was watching, the young lady was talking about, the stresses that she faced. And she talked about, okay, what are the spaces that I feel comfortable? And what are the things that I do where I feel happy? And these are different ways where we can try to find out, okay, what can I do in order to get myself in a place where I'm safe and happy without doing some destructive things? So learning about these things is very important. For more information on how to register for classes and get help from our tutoring center, visit www.gab-nicnursingtutor.com. That is www.gabnicnursingtutor.com. To view our free or paid classes, sign up on www.thinkific.com. That's www.thinkific.com, and register for the pre-recorded classes of your choice after searching for the Gab-Nic Tutoring Center uploads. We offer in-person tutoring and Zoom calls. You can also find us on YouTube for more free classes and tips on how to do better in nursing. We are also on Facebook, where we upload articles, tips, and tricks on how you can make your journey to becoming a nurse smooth and near effortless. Did I mention Instagram? Basically, we are everywhere. So check us out or call 917-602-9927 and we will tell you just how to join. See you soon.